For real people, real talk, and unreal news, this is Sunday Blues with Ren and Jerry. As y'all have probably seen in the news, the tensions have been rising in North Dakota at the Dakota Access Pipeline, where water protectors have been being maced. They've been put in dog kennels. They've been arrested and strip searched. They've been hit by rubber bullets. They've even been infiltrated with someone from DAPL who had an AR-15, even pointed it at them. But it looked like he was trying to infiltrate their
infiltrate the protesters and kind of make it. And this is a common thing that happens where they plant someone in the protest group that appears to be violent or stirs up violence, but they're actually from the other side.
Yeah,
a plant.
Exactly. It's meant to make the water protectors look bad and at the same time give cops a reason to take even more harshful enforcement actions. And so things have been escalating, and lots of people are going, and we've been seeing pictures of people being maced.
Yeah, they're literally hosing people down with mace. Like, they have 5-gallon buckets and a spray hose, as if they're spraying, I would say, pesticides.
Yes.
Is what it looks like, but instead it's mace, and they have pictures of people literally drenched in the white chemical.
Yeah.
Which obviously, I've never been maced, but I've heard that it's very painful.
Oh yeah, it looks awful, and at the same time, it's getting very cold up there in North Dakota right now, and the pipeline has pretty much reached the Missouri River and the sacred water of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, and they are in the water, trying to.
People are standing in freezing water right now, trying to prevent them from drilling under the river.
Exactly, and so it's finally got national attention. It's finally got corporate media attention, although they keep just focusing on what the state police and the local police are telling them. But and because of this media attention, we finally got a comment from Obama. So President Obama told the online news outlet that his administration is monitoring the situation closely, but will let it play out for several more weeks, quote unquote. He says, as a general rule, my view is that there is a way for us to accommodate sacred lands of Native Americans, and I think that right now the Army Corps is examining whether there are ways to reroute this pipeline.
So yeah, that was very lukewarm, and it's like, what, you're gonna let it play out? It's already been playing out for months, and what is clear that is happening is that peaceful protesters are getting physically assaulted. In my view, they're getting physically assaulted not only by police officers from North Dakota and surrounding states that have been called in as reinforcements, but also hired goons, private security forces hired by Energy Transfer Partners. And this is just horrible. And as I said, I had commented on Jimmy Dore posted a really good tweet where he was just like, see, this is like no Trump needed. This is fascism in America. They're protecting an oil pipeline and not and assaulting people that are trying to stop it. And I commented, back in the 60s in the Civil Rights Movement, the National Guard would be able to be called in by the president to protect people. And in fact, they were, to enforce integration when there were all these like crazy psychos that didn't want schools and things to integrate. The National Guard was called in to protect the people so that they could go to school to protect protesters.
That's exactly right, and that's just putting it into perspective, which is the government is supposed to be protecting the people, like you said. They're supposed to stand up for the people when they're under attack, and who are the police protecting? Who's Obama protecting when he says, let's let it play out more weeks? By saying let's let it play out for several more weeks, he's basically saying let's let them continue building that pipeline. Let's let them continue to be arresting all of these Native Americans, all these water protectors. Let's continue putting them in dog kennels, shooting them with rubber bullets. I mean, they're doing everything they can and calling people all across the world to go over there to stop this pipeline from being built because of the devastating consequences of it polluting the drinking water, of them digging up their buried ancestors, their buried family members, of them destroying and taking their land. when he says let's let it play out for a few more weeks, whose side is he on?
Well, it's just a way. It's another way, another corporate dim taking a non-position, because the National Guard was called out against the protesters, which is really horrible to me because, yeah, the president, he does have the authority to call in the National Guard and to call the governor of North Dakota and say, if you don't stop this right now and pull your people off, the feds are coming in. He has that authority, and he's trying to basically act as if he doesn't. And, oh, well, you know, this is kind of their situation, and I can't really get involved, you know, so... Yeah, it's pretty annoying. And then there's another part of the comment, right?
Yeah, so I'm gonna read that. So he says, okay, so Obama called it, quote unquote, a challenging situation. He says, there's an obligation for protesters to be peaceful, and there's an obligation for authorities to show restraint, he said. And I want to make sure that as everybody is exercising their constitutional rights to be heard, that both sides are refraining from situations that might result in people hurt. Well,
and so on one side, yeah, let's just take that comment right there on its face. On one side, we have peaceful protesters who name me one incident where an officer's been injured during this entire thing or assaulted. I can't think of one. I know they said they arrested one lady because apparently she shot a gun at them, but she didn't hit anyone. But that was just we didn't even get the full story or her side of the story or any other witnesses other than what the cops said.
Right.
Which is that she tried to shoot him. But other than that, I haven't heard of any cops being injured, of people hurting police officers there. And then on the other side, you have fully armed billy clubs, 5-gallon mace, rubber bullet, police force, tanks and riot gear. Even when they're just sitting down and trying to pray, they'll break it up and arrest people. So how can you say, okay, on both sides it needs to be peaceful? It's clear, it's abundantly clear that one side is being completely unpeaceful and violating the constitutional rights of these people, not only to protest, but also, as Jerry has mentioned, the Native Americans and their rights, their federal rights, to be protected and to be protected on their land and have determination of what happens on that land.
Yes.
You know, because in their perspective, we fucking massacred their ancestors, forced them onto a patch of land, which we call reservations, and they have their own law and don't have as much legal ability as people outside of the reservation. But, you know, we did that with the saying of, okay, this is going to be your land and you have control over it. So we say, even though we're basically corralling you into one section of our country, we're saying, well, at least you have authority. But now we're totally even going back on that.
Yeah.
So that's just bullshit.
And we're destroying their land to build a pipeline that's going to go through it and poison their sacred water, and which is also happens to be the drinking water for millions of people across several states.
Yeah, as Jimmy Dore always says, the Missouri River is the longest river in the United States. It supplies drinking water for millions of people. One rupture, one leak could totally contaminate that and fuck that up, kill the wildlife, ruin people's source of drinking and bathing water. And yeah, it's just a horrible idea. I mean, I didn't even know before this whole pipeline fight came up. I wasn't even aware that we were able to drill underneath a river and put a pipe of oil.
Yeah.
On it. Who would approve that? And that goes back to the Army Corps of Engineers and other places that have approved this. So another aspect of this is that Obama, we had covered, I guess it was several weeks ago, came out and said, okay, we're going to do a temporary halt to construction. But what that really was a voluntary halt. And the only thing that they're preventing them from doing is drilling under the Missouri River. And as Jerry said, on both sides, the pipeline's almost complete. The river is the last piece. So it's just really terrible.
And so, yeah, once they reach the point where they're going to the next step is to build under the river. If they do that, they're breaking the law, and the police are going to have to turn around and take action against those building the pipeline instead of the water protectors.
Which is very doubtful that they're going to do, since they've been totally beating down the water protectors this entire time. So,
and they're all, and then I'm sure we covered before how they're arresting all the journalists, and anybody who's getting close to that area, they arrest them and charge them. A documentarian lady is I forget her name, but she's
I think it's Dea something,
and she's been charged with like about over 30 years.
Well, she has the potential to be sentenced to 35 years. I don't think she's been actually like charged and sentenced, but the crime that they are charging her with, I believe, is felony. Like, I know Amy Goodman got charged with trespassing and a felony to incite a riot. So it's probably a similar thing, and you can get a really long sentence for that. So
yeah, I just wanted to put this into perspective. So we saw Obama's response to what's going on, the atrocious acts going on over there in North Dakota. And Bernie Sanders, he also has been vocal about this, and he wrote a letter to President Obama, and I just want to read a little bit from that. Okay, so he says, Dear President Obama, I write respectfully but urgently to request your intervention in the very troubling situation unfolding at and around the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation in North Dakota. As you know, over the past days, scores of law enforcement officers dressed in riot gear and supported by military-style vehicles forcibly removed hundreds of peaceful protesters who had gathered to oppose the Dakota Access Pipeline. There are disturbing reports of officers using sound cannons, pepper spray, and rubber bullets. The authorities have already arrested at least 140 people. The first priority must be protecting the safety of the peaceful protesters. That is why I urge you to direct the Department of Justice to send observers to protect the protesters. First Amendment rights to protest the pipeline. And then he says, I also urge you to request that North Dakota Governor Jack Dalrymple, I can't remember to read his name, remove the National Guard from the camp, as the military presence only threatens to inflame an already tense situation even more. And lastly, I urge you to direct the Army Corps of Engineers to stop construction within a mile between Highway 1806 and the Missouri River to help reduce tension. And that's just a couple of paragraphs from his letter to President Obama. And it's really good. I urge you all to find it. It was written to him on October 28th, 2016. And that just shows that the president can take action, to alleviate the situation, to de-escalate it.
He's the president of the United States, and there are situations, as I've already said, go look up the history of the civil rights movement, where the president can use his executive authority to overrule local police departments that are bullying protesters. Another great example of this was Freedom Rides. When the Freedom Riders started getting into the Deep South, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, local police departments were going up on them and pulling them out of the buses and beating on them. And John F. Kennedy, our president at the time, eventually ordered National Guard troops to go down there and to assist those people, because all they were literally doing was riding a bus with black people and white people. So I mean, it's just amazing to me that 50 years later we're still seeing these same kind of tactics, and that our current president is so removed from this that he's just willing to let it happen.
Yeah, supposed progressive, supposed liberal, supposedly for the people, bunch of BS, because the people who gave loans to Energy Transfers, the company who owns this pipeline, are the banks, are like Wells Fargo and Citibanks and all these other banks. And guess who those banks donated to when President Obama was running for election? And guess who they're still donating to? Who does speeches, which is Hillary Clinton. President Obama, Hillary Clinton. This is why donations to politicians really just muddles things. It basically puts the president in a situation where maybe, morally he's for the water protectors, but his hands are tied because of his donors, because he can't insult the donors.
Yeah, note he said nothing about maybe we should just scrap this pipeline altogether. It's all about, okay, maybe we can reroute it, but it really doesn't matter. At a certain point, as we said, the Missouri River is so long, it's going to cross cross the river somewhere.
Yes.
Maybe not right by the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation, but if they reroute it, it's going to have to cross the river somewhere. And the real moral question here is ultimately, are we willing to put all that drinking water at risk when we know how many pipeline accidents we've had?
Yes.
I mean, they just had another one in Alabama. They had 2 back-to-back on the same pipeline.
That's awful.
And yes, it contaminated their river and their environment down there, and it sent oil prices soaring because they lost all that oil, and they had a shortage. And, you know, let's just get over the notion that these pipelines are safe, because that's really how they try to sell it.
Yeah.
This is the safest, most efficient way. We actually, Jerry and I went to a protest here in Austin against Texas Parks and Wildlife because, amazingly, and this is just another example of that corporate government tie, amazingly, Kelsey Welch, the CEO of Energy Transfer Partners that's building this Dakota Access Pipeline, is on the governing board of Texas Parks and Wildlife, which manages all our Texas state parks and wildlife reserves and natural areas. So he's on there along with 8 other people that have no business being on there. There's a guy, I don't know his name, I forgot his name, but he owns a radioactive waste disposal company.
Yeah.
And he was appointed to the board of our parks. Like, it just goes so deep, you know? So we were there and we protested that.
Yeah, there were the commissioners for Texas Parks and Wildlife Department are appointed by the governor of Texas, which is Governor Abbott. And by the way, it's Kelsey Warren, not Welch, just to correct that real quick.
Oh, shit. Sorry.
That's okay.
My boss's last name.
That's fine. But
yeah,
so Kelsey Warren. And so, yeah, we were all calling for his resignation, for them to remove him, because how crazy is it that the CEO of Energy Transfers is also a commissioner who approves pipelines that go through Texas parks and wildlife areas. Of course he's going to approve that. How is that not a conflict of interest? And not only is he approving, is it a conflict of interest, you know, he's going to profit off of approving these pipelines to go through these parks that go into the Gulf.
Exactly. So that was the specific one that they were discussing at this particular meeting that all these people protested and signed up to speak at. They were going to try to put a pipeline through a wildlife management area that was right on the coast, all of our like Texas Gulf coastal wetlands, right by South Padre Island. Obviously, if a rupture happened there, that would totally destroy the ecosystem.
And there's also the Trans-Pecos pipeline going through Big Bend. There's a lot going on over here in Texas. And it's really disturbing. And again, going back to the safety of pipelines, not only is it almost inevitable that it's going to leak, but if it does leak and explode, the plans for taking care of that is really minimal. There's no safe way to manage an oil spill already. I mean, just look at what happened in the Gulf with BP and that huge one where oil was just going into the Gulf for months, really. I think it was,
Yeah, it was at least 2 to 3 months that gallons and gallons and gallons of oil were going into the Gulf every day. It was horrifying. We've talked about this before on the podcast.
So if it spills, if we're building it under the Missouri River and we have one link, and people depend on that for drinking water, I mean, of course it's going to contaminate the water, and then we're going to have another Flint situation on our hands. And we already saw, you know, how we still haven't really helped the people in Flint. It's been forgotten about now that we're past the Democratic primary. Yeah,
exactly. It's totally faded into the background, which is really unfortunate. And like, I think what's so important about this Dakota Access Pipeline fight is that it does represent, as we've said, here in Texas, we have 3 pipelines right now that people are trying to fight for similar situations, either threatening a protected wildlife area like Big Bend, which is, if you're not from Texas, you may not know this, but Big Bend is our spot. You know what I mean? It's like the
pristine, beautiful.
Yes, pristine, hiking, mountains. It's been a protected wildlife area for decades, and for them to just go in there and say, "Oh, we're gonna do a pipeline right through the middle of it, right in the Rio Grande River, with all this fragile ecosystem and wildlife here." That's horrible. So, definitely look into what's going on in your area, because I guarantee you there's probably something.
Yes.
You know, there is probably something, and we all need, I think, what the fight represents, again, is just this overall fight that we need to have to protect our water, protect our resources. And it's like, no, it's not okay for you to fucking put aquifers, rivers, coastal areas, all these precious places at risk, just so we can do oil and gas. As they said at the protest, they're like, we don't even need to do this anymore. We have solar panels, we have wind.
Yeah, we have ways, and the oil and gas is going to be exported, so it's not like we're even benefiting from that at the same time. So there's so many layers, but yes, we all want to be there with the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, with all the water protectors there, and fighting with them side by side. But for those of us who can't, definitely look locally, like Ren was saying, because believe you me, there's a fight right in your backyard, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, to talk about support of the Standing Rock tribe, if you're interested in that, obviously you can donate to the Sacred Stone Camp. Just Google this stuff, and we'll put links to it in our show notes, of course. But yeah, you can donate to the Sacred Stone Camp. You can donate to the Legal Defense Fund. They have a supply list of all the stuff that they need to get through the winter. Because, yeah, don't forget, it's fucking cold up there.
Yes.
And they have to live in a camp. So they need supplies. I know they need winter coats and sub-zero sleeping bags. And also you can call the White House, you can call the governor of North Dakota, you can call the Army Corps of Engineers, leave messages, write letters. We have to put a huge public pressure, because obviously, even with the massive protests that have lasted for months, it's still not enough to stop them. They just don't give a fuck. They really don't
care about people.
So we have to fight hard, and we can't make an assumption that they're sitting there thinking, oh wow, these people, they're so against this pipeline, maybe we should sit down and talk to them, or maybe we should kind of listen to their concerns, because this is a whole population of people here that we're putting at risk. No, they don't give a fuck. So just remember that, and remember that we have to fight hard against this, and that President Obama is not going to do anything.
He's not taking action. We can't depend on him. And even if he somehow reroutes the pipeline, the point is we can't have these pipelines anymore, because they're going to leak inevitably. We have to get away from these pipelines.
Yeah, we got to transition to clean energy. But anyway, so this was kind of a long one. Thanks for listening. We are Sunday Blues Podcast. You can find us at sundaybluespodcast.com. Our Twitter handle is @SundayBluesPod, and we are available on YouTube, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. So follow us on those platforms, subscribe to us, leave us comments. We want to hear from you guys. Thanks.
Thanks.